Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Warcraft news. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of 8.3 to talk about today. We've got some classic, but also some drama. I wanted to address the Pyro/Tally leak situation, but also the recent criticism of our content, which I don't actually think to be silly drama. It's stuff that I take seriously. It's stuff that I mostly agree with, so I think it's worth us having a conversation, a chat about moving forward with that stuff. Now, time for an uncharacteristically blunt segue. November is almost over, and that means that it's both Pin and Demon Hunter month. These are pretty awesome. The $25 tier of our Patreon just really blew me away with this pin design, which I love. Now, as for next month, well, we're in the middle of making it, but we're going to do an art book. Stay tuned for more on that later. Oh, and a bunch were returned to sender, so if you didn't get your stuff, if it's late, hit me up in Patreon DMs and we'll get it sorted. Oh, and also, I just put 2 vlogs up there. So, with that, let's go. Let's talk about the channel. So yeah, that lore barrage. Look, I know the channel schedule has not been ideal lately. It's mostly been the same type of content, and I love that type of content. I know there's an audience that really loves that type of content. I also know it's not everyone. I wish I had have spaced things out a little bit more there and done it properly, but I kind of locked myself in with sponsor deadlines, so not an ideal situation, and it is on me. Now, there is good news. The complete history of World of Warcraft is starting up again. Our next episode goes up tomorrow, and the ones past that one will see the revamped channel style. So all these recent cool editing transitions and elements, the text effects, they come from our latest hire, Nikki. So we've been very keen to get the complete history up to snuff on the graphics end. Now, as for the delay, well, 8.3 came earlier than we thought, knocked us off schedule, then BlizzCon, then Nikki joined the company, so that was just more hectic than anticipated. But, well, let's just say, back on the saddle. That series will be running continuously. I'm going to space out the lore content a bit more in the future, and I'm going to work to get more gameplay-related topics, and you'll see the first of that next week. As for titles and thumbnails, here's the thing, I don't like them either. So it's a case of you think you don't like them, and you don't like them, and I don't particularly like them either. But ultimately, not doing titles and thumbnails like that basically halves views or more. And look, I've ran this experiment throughout my 7 years of doing YouTube. People say they want plain titles and plain thumbnails, and they actually do want that. But then when it actually comes down to it, they don't click on them. Now that click-through rate, so the percentage of people that actually click on the thumbnail or title, well, that's the first data signal that YouTube gets. Now the algorithm then punishes you if that's bad. So, your CTR dropping from 8% to 5%, that pretty much drops your watch time by 1/3. And that then causes YouTube to show your video to far fewer people. And look, you think it sucks, I think it sucks, but that's just kind of the way it is right now. I'm not against finding another place to simultaneously put videos. I mean, maybe a website or a mailing list somewhere, where those of us who want more reasonable titles and thumbnails could just go to see them. So let me know if you've got any thoughts on that. I mean, we're at the stage now where I think we kind of could handle doing that. I mean, hell, maybe we'd have a nobs.bellular.com, and that's where the things could go. So there's that. Then a quick thing on the video game news. Development is going really well. Our team has passed 100,000 words of the script, and yeah, between new editors, game team, I mean, that's where the sponsor money goes, so it is going to an actual thing, and yeah, there'll be more stuff to talk about in the very near future on that. It's coming up very excitingly, let's just say. Okay, let's get into patch 8.3. So I'm properly coming back, and look, I've been open about really bouncing off BFA as an expansion, but patch 8.3 is much of the reason why I'm actually going to be coming back to the game. So today I'm going to explain why that is the case. I'm going to do that by rounding up the core of patch 8.3 and just working out, if Blizzard have been able to escape the gravity of what I would characterize as Battle for Azeroth gameplay misfire. So what's really got me about WoW is some of the treadmill, like the randomness, the infinite AP, the diminishing returns, the layers upon layers of systems that kind of, to me, give the game this needless complexity that actually doesn't deliver any more fun in return. So how does patch 8.3 change that? Well, I think it slays a bunch of the bad, and then it replaces it with things that are better. Not perfect, mind you, but better. Now, that combined with a bunch of us getting back together on Ravencrest, like IRL, that's got me keen for retail. So, Titan Forging's replacement, Corrupted Gear, initially did set off alarm bells, but Blizzard mostly did listen to player feedback there, and they removed a layer of RNG from that system. So, Corrupted Gear has fixed levels of corruption now, and with sockets not being a part of the equation there, and its frequency being less than, say, Titan Forging, I think we're actually set for more reasonable gearing, which sounds insane to say. We're not going to have the layers of, the benthic lottery of patch 8.2. So basically now, an item has got a chance on drop to receive a random corruption affix. Now, this item will randomly assign one of 11 positive affixes and then one of 3 tiers of magnitude. Now, those tiers of magnitude will then decide the corruption value placed on that gear, and that amount of corruption, that is static based on the tier. So basically, what's the state of the RNG? Let's go through it. Well, did an item corrupt? Which positive affix did it get? And what tier is the positive affix in terms of its magnitude? That's the 3 layers of RNG, and that is down from 4, maybe 5 layers that the system was initially introduced to us with. So yeah, I'd say that's a good bit better. Now, it must also be kept in mind that there are 11 potential affixes over 3 tiers, leading to 33 choices per bit of gear over potentially 19 slots, which, yeah, is quite a lot. Now, the crux of the system is the trade-off between a powerful affix, such as decreasing the amount of, damage you take from periodic damage, with the potentially devastating effects of having too much corruption. Now, this is represented, of course, in the new corruption debuffs. There's actually a new one of those, Cascading Disaster, that kicks in at level 60, and that actually will begin proccing other negative effects, and it will quickly lead to your death. So that's that system. Now, in terms of other things, there aren't really any near infinitely grindable parts of patch 8.3 in the gearing system. Now, I do think the corruption has some downsides, such as it feeling forced to purify a bit of potentially good gear, which, that kind of feels like you're giving up potential future power for being able to use it now, which isn't really ideal, but generally I think that system will keep eye level bloat in check, and it will make eye level be more correlated with the difficulty level of the content that you're doing, which I do think is good. Now, there's also sockets, and with them, I think we've seen some real progress. Sockets don't come in gear, right? You purchase sockets for corrupted mementos. Now, this initially had me worried that you'd just be grinding those mementos forever, but that's just not going to be the case. So there's pretty much a cap on how many of them you can get, as they're primarily earned by doing horrific visions. Now, you'll get from the low to high hundreds depending on how far you get and the difficulty level that you go with, but what matters here is that you are only going to get enough of the entrance resource to only do a limited number per week. So there's no infinite grind there, and it feels a lot more like VP back in the day, which I do prefer. Basically it's that thing where if Blizzard let people near infinitely grind, as with artifact power, they'll kind of feel pressured to do so, and then others will kind of feel pressure to follow. Well, this system has been implemented in such a way that won't happen. I think that's really good, right? They've also then stopped the doubling entrance price for the horrific visions, just making them cost a flat 1,000 resource every time. Now, this has been coupled with them essentially killing artifact power. Isn't that incredible? Yeah, there's no infinite grind trait like there used to be. The max level is 80, the final main trait comes at 75, so they're not adding much there. And in reality, this is Blizzard sunsetting artifact power. They're just sunsetting the system. They're making it mostly irrelevant in patch 8.3, and thank God. The nerfing of my past work, all with the knowledge that any work that I do now is going to be rendered pointless in a few weeks, that just killed my motivation to play my character, and they made the whole endgame progression surround that. So yeah, if it's the best that you can do is stay in a treadmill, I'm a lazy bastard. I'm just going to get off the treadmill, and that's what happened. So for the most part, right, you'll just be doing the content that you want to do. You'll get however many horrific visions done per week, you'll do enough assaults to get by, and that'll be that. You'll be free to do what you want in World of Warcraft. The need to grind out the AP, it won't be there. Titan Forging, it won't be perfect, right, but the new system, I think, is better. It's at least a bit more low-key. Then there's the legendary cloak. Now, once that is ranked up, you'll just have to do a weekly quest to upgrade it. That's all it's going to be, and that's going to increase your corruption resistance over the long run. And what's great here is that quest is not a new thing, going and farming something forever. Nah, it's stuff you'd be doing anyway. It's just doing a horrific vision with a mask or killing the Zoth on normal or above. Totally normal WoW gameplay. So basically, I can log in, I will feel like I'll have a more clear way to progress my character, one that will more clearly matter, and it'll be less dependent on RNG, there'll be less diminishing returns and things just clogging that up. And for me, the core part of playing WoW, PvP, dungeons, a bit of raiding, for me that's been locked behind a whole bunch of annoying mechanics like Azerite and artifact power. If patch 8.3 is removing those pain points, then I'll feel free to just play the core content of the game. Now that said, content-wise, I've got to admit, 8.3 8.3 is a bit in the middle. I mean, the assaults look very average. The horrific visions actually do look fun, especially for me as a solo challenge where I'd have no reses and like everything I do would really matter. And I'm sure the raid will be great. But still, there's not really much that's going to set the world on fire. And my point here is actually that the removal of those pain points in the game, they mean I'm more likely to play the game, to engage in that core content, the dungeons and stuff. That's pretty much always been great in WoW. And seriously, the removal and the scaling back of their engagement driving BS that they've just progressively stuffed into the game, I mean, that really kills so much of what I used to enjoy. That stuff being toned down, that is so much better. That will free me up to actually enjoy the content that the World of Warcraft team are developing. Now, that said, it's not all ideal. I mean, the corrupted gear system, there are downsides there. The idea of destroying gear's potential future power in order to wear it now, I don't think that's great, and I hope that doesn't make it into Shadowlands. But still, the obsolescence of some of the past BFA systems in favor for the new 8.3 ones, I think that is great. It's just a few small steps forward, likely not enough for many people to return to contemporary WoW, but it's enough for me. And I think this just highlights how much of a blocker many of those sort of engagement systems have been for so many people. Now that said, give me more abilities, remove the GCD change, and then we'll really be talking. Now, for me, the other angle is a bit more personal. Our latest hire, Nikki, who's driven many of the edit improvements that you've seen in the recent lore videos, he's having his guild reform, and that's happening on my server. So I'll have a stronger social circle in World of Warcraft. That always is just a really important part of the game. Past that, though, there's one thing I should mention. There will be eye level 400 BOA catch-up gear. It's going to drop from the new assaults, and unlike benthic gear, it's just plain item level 400 gear. No sockets, no procs, it's just there for the catch-up. And honestly, I'm fine enough with it in this case. I think it's almost in line with 8.3 just being a mechanical reset of BFA. Okay. It's drama time. Pyromancer had somebody leak a phone image from an NDA tour of the Blizzard campus, and this revealed concept art visuals of a mysterious character, basically revealed what the jailer looked like fully. Now that led to the latest spat between himself and Tally on Twitter, and it was one that, I mean, at the very least, it was kind of funny to watch it unfold over breakfast, but past that, I've got to admit, I don't massively care that much. I think a lot of that drama, it's just pointless noise, and I don't think it's going to make your life that much better. The same goes, I think, for basically all drama. I mean, if it's WoW Classic streamer drama, then yeah, it's literally reality TV, and I think it's a waste of time. Now, on the topic of leaks, I mean, it's easy enough for me. If something is out there to the degree where it's widely known, I'm going to cover it as news. And generally, I think I've got the same standards as Wowhead when it comes to that stuff. If I'm given a leak by a leaker, and I know that to be true, and that I'll be, sort of bursting it, I'm not going to cover it. But if it's a bunch of banter on 4chan that leads to some interesting speculation, then I'm all for that. Take the initial Shadowlands leaks. I loved that. It was really fun. I had legitimately zero idea it would be the next expansion. I don't have any leakers inside Blizzard. It was just, a bunch of fun images that allowed us to springboard into a lore discussion of the Shadowlands. Now, if I had have received Shadowlands images and I knew them to be 100% true, I would not have posted them. As to why, well, part of that is respect for the creators, and I'll be real here, a part of it is that in many ways, it's just too much hassle getting involved with all that drama, and I kind of couldn't be bothered. Now, I also say that as somebody who's not super close to Blizzard. My main two contacts have left the company over there. The last time I was invited to their campus, I had to reject because the timing didn't work out, and I mean, yeah, I've worked with them. Most of their notable devs don't follow me on Twitter, they don't banter with me on Twitter. I know they do for some WoW creators, so I'm not really in there, and in the grapevine, I hear that some of my criticisms haven't really done me many favors over there, but still, I basically say this being in a position where it's not like I'll lose that much standing with Blizzard if I did, put a leak out there. In terms of, WoW creator goals, you might say that, hosting the BlizzCon Q&A is, a big goal, but honestly, I'm a pretty introverted person, so things like that just wouldn't really be up my alley anyway. Now, that said, if there's a whistleblower and there's, a journalistically interesting story there, then, I would maybe help a whistleblower if I thought it was right, but, yeah, not into the drama. Now, I think the most recent drama has just been just a bit of a waste of time, and importantly, emotional energy on the part of the people that were involved. I think it's just led to more division within the WoW community, and, I just rather turn up to work in the morning, write some videos, record them, put them out there. That's what gets me going, not really getting into a slugging match. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's move on. Okay, Black Friday. Blizzard are running a fairly large WoW sale, and that's something I think that makes a bit more sense than usual, given the massive number of players who have returned to Classic. So, digital deluxe items are discounted, and BFA is 50% off. What I think is interesting, though, is the 50% off new subscriptions. That's an offer they're doing. It's for new players and accounts, but there's another angle to it here, and credit to Perk for pointing this out. So, you can recruit 2 WoW accounts, under your main BNet account, but then what you can do overall is get 3 Blizzard accounts, then make multiple WoW accounts on all of them, and then purchase 50% off first months on all of them. And if you do that right, and it's all properly linked to your main account, then you'll get all of the Recruit a Friend rewards for $90. Now, those rewards include 4 months of game time, each valued at $15. So if you were to play World of Warcraft for the next 4 months, then the new cosmetics technically would cost you like $30. Credit to Perk from Wowhead for doing that. If you'd actually like to do this, then check out her article. Now, as for my thoughts on those cosmetics, I mean, you know what, I don't really like them, right? And I'm not the biggest fan of all the Black Friday consumerism stuff, but I just think it's interesting. A part of me is wondering, you know, are Blizzard doing that intentionally? Like, do they know that's a thing that people are going to do? I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but I'd love to hear what you think about it down below. And then finally, let's round it off with some classics. So, the honor system is in full swing, but one funny thing has happened. PvP items initially added in the Naxxramas patch are actually here now in Phase 2. Now, that throws power a bit out of whack, but those PvP armor sets aren't unlocked until rank 7, 8, and 10, and as such, they're not going to be massively common outside of the PvP servers. Further to this, then, the incredibly powerful Grand Marshal and High Warlord rank 14 weapons, which are really cool, well, they're only going to be available to a small percentage of players on each server, so it's not game rooting or anything. Now, also, faction imbalance remains a bit of a tricky issue here. Horde, of course, skews PvP, and that's leading to, I mean, if you want to get a flight point, sometimes that can be a problem, so hopefully Blizzard just get aggressive with the, the faction-based server transfers to try to fix that issue up a bit. And then finally, Kazak and Azuragos have been defeated in record time across servers, but there seems to be a bug with Master Looter. So players have reported downing the world bosses only to then find people outside of the raid being on the loot table. And this is wild because it's even been reported that players from the enemy faction have actually been on that loot table, which is mad. And considering the importance of these mobs, I mean, it's a bit wild, but I mean, you know, for me, it's no harm, no foul. I imagine that fixes for this are going to be like their top priority over at Blizzard. So there you go. That's it for the World of Warcraft news this week. Honestly, it was a slow news week, but I thought it was the right time to just give my thoughts on patch 8.3, have a chat about me coming back to the game, and really just the core things that for me were like blockers to actually really playing World of Warcraft with the gusto that I used to, in the Legion and just with the pre-Legion days. I mean, even in Warlords of Draenor, like just getting my characters in a decent state and then farming old mounts and stuff like that, and doing the garrisons and doing the money making, that was like enough for me back then. But for some reason in BFA, just whatever way all of the systems have compounded, it just really kind of kicked me out of the game. But now that 8.3 is taking some of those things away, I'm a lot more likely to play the game. And looking at Shadowlands, honestly, even if Shadowlands was a beautiful looking, but super middle of the road expansion in terms of content, if it just had systems that didn't make me sad, I'd be far more likely to play it. And thankfully, it does seem like it's going to be like ratcheting down those sort of bad aspects of WoW. And that really does have me a lot more hopeful for the future of the game. And then, of course, yeah, a lot of dramatic stuff, not really dramatic, but just, talking about the state of the channel. That's been an interesting one. Again, I really want to hear what you think about that. It's like literally the most important thing, and it is most of what I've been thinking about in my spare time, honestly, for the last week, of like just how I can make people happy. And it's not like I'm going out there just to please people, but it's more that I'm acknowledging that there's stuff that's not ideal in how the content's been. So I do actually really want to hear your feedback on that. And yeah, look, if we can do a nobullshit.bellular.com and you could go there and you would just get the videos with a really boring title and really boring thumbnail, then I'm totally down for doing something like that because, I do want to, put my money where my mouth is on that one. The reason why the thumbnails and titles are the way that they are is 100% because of the YouTube algorithm. Look, I started YouTube. Much of that was from, listening to Blue Please, Warcraft Radio, into Total Biscuit on YouTube. And, some of the favorite things that he would do from my perspective were, remember the rambles he'd do, or like the longer discussions where, I will now talk about X issue for just about 40 minutes, right? He'd upload those. I really like that. That's the type of thumbnails and titles that I like personally, but unfortunately, there are just economic realities and algorithm realities with how YouTube works. That means that, those of us who are super just focused on the core content, who kind of know what we want to watch, will just click on it knowing what it is. Unfortunately, we're just completely outnumbered by the people for whom the titles and thumbnails really are sort of core in the watching decision, and that is just how YouTube is set up these days. I think it sucks. I think it's actually really bad for the state of content, but Ultimately, if I don't do that, I mean, I'm not lying about like not doing that, maybe dropping views by 50%. It really is that hardcore. Like, I'd say it really would drop them by 20%, but then what happens is YouTube picks up on that, thinks, that's bad, and then suppresses it in favor of other content. And realistically, if I was to do that, I mean, like, people would lose jobs, and that's absolutely not something that I'm going to let happen. So that's what's up there. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.